All right, welcome to the RECO12 speaker meeting. My name is Justin, and I am an addict. And thanks to my God, the steps, and the fellowship of other addicts, I am sober one day at a time since June 19th, 2015. And for that, I am beyond grateful. Welcome once again to the RECO12 speaker meeting. We are an organization whose addictions include alcohol, drugs, lust and sex, food and gambling, just to name a few. We come together from all places, faiths, and backgrounds to learn the similarity of addiction and to gain tools and hope from others who are walking a similar path. We invite recovering addicts with at least 1 year sobriety and who are actively working their recovery in their respective fellowships to share their experience, strength, and hope on a live Zoom meeting each Friday at 10 a.m. Pacific time for 20 to 25 minutes. Then we, the live audience, get the opportunity to ask questions of the speaker for another 20 to 25 minutes. In order to ask questions for those of you who are here live, please type them in the Q&A link at the bottom of your Zoom window. If you're hearing this podcast recorded and would like to participate as a live audience member, or if you would like to be a guest speaker in a future meeting, please go to RECO12.com, that's RECO12.com, to learn more and to submit your email address there to receive weekly invitations or to submit to become a guest speaker. RECO12 is an ad-free service, and we appreciate your help in keeping it that way. We gratefully accept contributions to help cover the cost of the Zoom platform, podcast platform, web hosting, and administrative costs. The guest speaker also chooses a fellowship or recovery-centered organization to which the majority of contributions from that week's meetings will be donated to. This week's speaker, Pamela, has chosen to have any contributions go to Addictive Eaters Anonymous. To contribute, you can go to RECO12.com/support, or you can click the link to PayPal that's in the chat there in the live Zoom meeting. Or if you use Venmo, you can also contribute there. Our handle is at RECO-12. That's 12 spelled out, TWELVE. When you contribute, please specify the meeting number. This is meeting number 11. Last week's meeting with Angie H. was inspiring and real, and I really enjoyed it. It went very well. If you missed hearing that one, or any other meeting we have done, you can listen to them in podcast form by searching for RECO12 Speaker Meeting Podcast on virtually any podcast platform that you use. Or you can go to the RECO12 website and find it under the link podcast. Speaking of that, if you have found these speaker meetings helpful and meaningful, do me a solid and please review and rate them in Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to them. This will help get the message out to other addicts who suffer and struggle. Now, let's introduce our guest today, our guest speaker, Pamela. All right, in her own words, she says, I came into the rooms obese, drunk, and inadequate at 29, but only truly surrendered at age 44. I thought I knew everything. I presented well. I had a marriage, 2 cars on the drive, and a mortgage. I had friends who adored me, and I had a life others might crave, but inside I was broken. I felt like a fraud. I couldn't stop eating chalk. Yes, chalk. I knew I needed more than to just stop eating, drinking, and popping painkillers. But how? How was I going to get out of this mess? I cried out, and my prayers were answered. All right, Pamela from Glasgow, we're excited to have you here. Take it away. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Justin. My name is Pamela, and I am an addict, an alcoholic, an addictive eater. I am a long-time member of Addictive Eaters Anonymous and Alcoholics Anonymous, and it's a complete pleasure to be asked to share my story on this platform. And of course, I share it in trusting that someone will need to hear it and will be as desperate as I was to change everything. I am 56 years old, and I believe that I was born an addict. I believe that the very first day that I left my mother's womb, which, by the way, was a cesarean section, I believe that I was born restless, irritable, and discontented. I believe that I was born with a gaping hole in my soul that manifested itself through my gut and my mouth. And I truly believe that when I was born, I immediately wanted something to soothe me and to take the pain away, you know, the pain of being born, of being alive, the cold, no longer inside my mother's womb. But who knows? Who knows? All I can tell you is that from a very, very young age, I remember feeling inadequate. I remember feeling not good enough, that God had made a mistake. He'd made a mistake when he created me. And I spent the whole of my childhood trying to catch up at school and with girlfriends and anybody at all that I admired. And I admired most people because I thought most people were better than me. Yeah. And my parents were immigrants. They arrived in the UK late 50s. I was born in the mid 1964. And my parents had already had 4 children, and I was the last of 5. I don't believe the illness of addiction is because of what my parents did or didn't do, but I only know that now through the process of step 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 and 8 and 9. I only know that now. But as a young child with no barometer and a load of feelings, I really thought that my parents made me into this screaming, gaping hole child. So I was one of 5. I was the youngest of 5. And the saddest thing was that none of my brothers lived long. One died at 9 months, one died at 6 months, and the other one barely was born. And then I had a sister, and she lived till she was 38. So I was one of 5. And by the time I came along, I believe that my parents probably worshipped and adored me to the best of their ability, because I was one of 2 girls, and the 4 other children, well, certainly the 3 were all deceased. And the reason why that's important is that I grew up in a family and never wanted for anything. Although they were immigrants, they were able to buy their own house in the first 2 years of arriving in this country. They had their own mortgage. My parents even had a car, and they hadn't passed their driving test. We had a backyard, an allotment, a driveway, a garage. We had 3 bedrooms and a beautiful bathroom. While most immigrants had none of that, and they lived in, I don't know if people recognize the word, tenant buildings, kind of with other families, large houses with 1 bedroom families living in them. But not me, you know. So why I ever felt that restlessness and irritability, that fear, I'll never know. And so prior to step 4, I despised my mother. I thought that she was one of these evil women who had taught me as a child, children are to be seen and not heard. So from a young age, I remember my first drinking and pill popping session at the age of 8. I remember being in the larder, the pantry, where my father kept his heart tablets on a shelf that I could barely reach. And in the back of the pantry was a crate of stout beers. And I remember being so irritated, so desperately needing to share my feelings, but unable to do it, that I reached up for my dad's heart tablets, and I took a whole load of them and swallowed it down with the dregs from a bottle of beer. And that was the start of the addiction for me, the start of the manifestation, the start of my body starting to crave sweet nectar of pills and beer, and of course the food. You know, food is, in my culture, food is in abundance, it's delicious, and you daren't come to visit my parents without having a feast of a meal. So when you're 8, 9, 10, and you're in a household that loves and adores you, and you're in a household where you think children are to be seen and not heard, it's just so easy to abuse food. Food was my number one addiction. It was delicious. And my mother was a great cook. You know, they came from the Caribbean. So if you know anything about Caribbean food, jerk chicken, jerk pork, fried fish, dumplings roasted, dumplings fried, and dumplings boiled in a stew. I mean, and my mother she worked as a chef in a college. So she would bring home the gatos, the apple pies, the mince pies, and the bars of chocolate. So, and because we were a well-off family, it was piled high. And because I was loved and adored, I just ate. And I ate because sugar and wine, and by this time, Avocat, Baileys, brandy, all of the liqueurs piled into one glass was just easy for me to eat and drink. So that was my childhood. Don't talk, don't speak unless you're spoken to, and just eat, and all the feelings will go away. And I remember going to bed often, turning to my sister and saying to her, I've just taken Dad's pills. And she would laugh. I mean, she didn't know what to say. And furthermore, my sister was also an addict, and she died of morbid obesity when she was 38 in 1999. So the two of us together were eaters. My sister would come down in the middle of the night. I loved my sleep too much. I would never come down in the middle of the night and disturb my sleep. But I was an eater. I grazed like a cow 24/7. And on birthdays and parties, I remember thinking to myself, if I can't be the best, I don't want to be here. And for school and games, if I can't be the best, I'm not taking part in those schools and those games. And I had parents who did their best, and yet parents who didn't know how to handle children with these wacky emotions, you know. So none of that, I'm not blaming any of that on my parents. I know that my parents were probably, especially my mother, she was probably one of us, probably had addiction. She died too, 10 years ago, of diabetes and drinking and eating, and also obese. So I think she probably had this illness. And so in the step 4 and the step 9, I can look at my parents and forgive them and know that you can't pass on what you haven't got. And they did their best. And in any case, I am so pleased that they came from the Caribbean. They gave me this wonderful opportunity to be born British, my education, my career, this very house that I live in is all due to the fact that my parents had the courage to come to the motherland where the streets were paved with British gold and make a go of it. So I can't blame them. They did their best. So here I am today. That was when I was 8, 9, and 10, and I am now 56. So I came into the rooms when I was 29, around about 1993 maybe. I'd had enough of me. I'd had enough of the restlessness, the irritability. Add into that oozing self-confidence, which I now know is ego. Add into that arrogance. Add into that a good career, some money, good looks, recipe for disaster and rock bottom, you know. I know that now. I didn't know that then. So I had a job, I had a good education. I started my career and left home at 18 but I couldn't stop eating, and I couldn't stop drinking, and I couldn't stop drugging. I controlled it. I controlled it in order for me to pass all the physical tests to join my job. And I restricted, when you're that white knuckle restriction, I held on to that for, let's say, 3 months. And I passed the physical and I passed the mental and the emotional tests because I was clever. I was okay in school. And then I got the job. And then as soon as I got the job, I just went mad with the addiction, with the food and the drink, because I was in a career that was men orientated and was, let's put it this way, the emergency services. And when you work for the emergency services and the shifts are 24 hours a day, it's easy to abuse drink, drugs, and food because you can tell yourself, I told myself, I needed it. I needed it. I was tired. I needed it. There was a lot of pressure. I needed it because all the men were drinking. I needed it because what you do when you're awake and you're working at 2 a.m., I needed to eat. So for me, my career enhanced my drinking, my drugging, and the delicious addiction to curries, takeouts, and sugar. So I came into the rooms at the age of 29, and I guess I'll just describe the first 15 years as I did my best. I was a member of all the fellowships and all of I call them the easier, softer fellowships. I came into AA, but who wants to stop drinking? I wasn't ready. I thought that I could enjoy and control my drinking. So I went to, I'll name them because there are members here who will probably be members. I went to CODA, I went to Debtors Anonymous, I went to Al-Anon, and I went to probably the other one around money and another one around food. And I did my best because I did what those fellowships said. I wrote reams about myself. I went to counsellors in the fellowship, and I thought that I could control and enjoy everything. 15 years later, now we're up to date, I met a woman. I cried out to God. My marriage was on the rocks. My job was barely tolerating me. And the drink and the lies and the food were all catching up with me. And I cried out to God one night on the 18th of July, 2008, and I said to God, kill me or kill me. I can't do this anymore. Now, at this stage, I wasn't 26 stones. That's about 325 kilos. At that stage, I wasn't that weight. I had entered the rooms in 1993 as 26 stones, 325 pounds. And through abstinence, controlling and enjoying what I thought I should eat, I managed to maintain a reasonable weight. But towards the end of 2008, I had started to eat again. I could no longer control drinking. I could no longer control painkillers, and I was off. And I cried out to God, kill me or kill me. And my prayers were answered. I returned to Alcoholics Anonymous. I returned to the Food Fellowship. And that very night, I saw a woman who had the message that I needed. And she talked about sobriety from everything, Pamela. Addiction swaps. It will go from the drink to the food, from the food to gambling, from gambling to debt, from shopping. It will just swap. And she shared with me that sobriety is about freedom from all substances and behavior. And she certainly identified with Addictive Eaters Anonymous, and that's where I met her. I met her in the fellowship of Addictive Eaters Anonymous, and that lady is still my sponsor today, 12 years later. And so I love the big book. I love reading all of the solutions, and the particular one that I want to share on in my solution is page 13 of the big book, which is Bill's story. And he talks about destruction of self. It meant destruction of self. It actually says self-centeredness, but I prefer saying self. That self of mine, that ego of mine, that big personality, that big shotism, that lovely smile of mine, it's got to go. It has its appropriateness. Of course it does. Of course I use my smile and my personality in my career and to attract other addicts into the solution. But when it comes to using it to manipulate and get what I want, destruction of self. And then the next line is, it talks about these were revolutionary and drastic ideas. Revolutionary, let me look it up, we might as well, so I can get it right. Page 13, maybe even page 14. These were revolutionary and drastic proposals. Well, I wonder what he's talking about there. Well, when I met my sponsor, I tell you, I needed people to tell me how to live. I needed people to tell me how to take action on a 24-hour basis. I needed to know how to relax and take it easy. And I needed to know how to form a relationship with a power greater than myself. And I love all of our fellowships books. I love the end of step 1 in the 12 and 12, the last 3 paragraphs. And it says something, well, who cares to go to these drastic measures? Who cares to talk about a power greater than themselves? And who cares to ask for help and have their ego smashed? None but the desperate. And I cast myself as a real alcoholic, desperate to get well. And my sponsor said, and are you willing to go to these extremes? And I said, yes, I am. I've had enough of me. I've had enough of my big shotism, my big personality, and thinking that I know everything. And of course, because of my job and because I'd been in and out of the fellowship since 1993, when I first asked for help in 2008, I thought I knew the 12 steps. And I thought I knew what surrender was. And I thought I knew what I should eat and how I should behave. But since being around these people in Addictive Eaters Anonymous and Alcoholics Anonymous, I have had to learn a new set of spiritual principles. I've had to ask for help like a newcomer. And I've been given that help free of charge. It's a marvelous, absolutely marvelous fellowship. And I love when Bill W. continues in the story and he says, like, you know, when I am plagued by waves of self-pity and resentment, page 15, that nearly drives me back to drink, I find that when all other measures fail, work with another alcoholic saves the day. And these, for me, are the revolutionary and drastic proposals that the big book talks about. Having a relationship on a daily basis with a sponsor and other sober women and men who can help me sort out my life problems, and most important, sort out my head. Because as we know, the problem with the alcoholic is in his thinking, and it's my head. That mental obsession that is followed by the craving for food and drink and drugs. That's my problem. That's my dilemma. And the 12 steps and a good sponsor and certainly a relationship with God enables me to transcend, not just live white knuckling from food and drink and drugs, but to transcend the obsession and to live a life full of action, freedom, joy, in order for us to be of maximum use to God, to my family, to my husband, and to the man in the street, and certainly to another alcoholic. So, yeah, 2008, I asked for help. She told me what to do. She made suggestions. Justin, tell me, is time up? Because I've lost my timing.
You've got 3 or 4 more minutes if you'd like to take it.
Great. Excellent. So I am in love with this fellowship. This fellowship has given me my life back. This fellowship gave me my finances. It absolutely mended my marriage. It's given me good mental health. It's given me friends beyond my wildest dream on every continent, in almost, I don't know, wherever there's AA, I've probably got at least one friend. Wherever there's AEA, I've got 5 friends in all of, the fellowship. We know each other very well. And on a daily basis, I will endeavor to call another member, usually my sponsor. But of course, this program is a bridge to living. I don't hang on to my sponsor like a baby that needs suckling. Of course I don't. But I do enjoy that diminishment of the ego. So every day I wake up and I ring my sponsor, let's say to check in. I don't like that term, but to check in. I don't always get a hold of her, and so I rely on a power greater than myself. But my ego, my sponsor helps me to make life decisions when I am confused and upset. And after ringing my sponsor each morning, I sit still with the book and I'll read one of the many things that we've talked about today from the big book. And then I'll share that with the women I sponsor, or anybody who phones me, actually, the sponsees or other alcoholics, addictive eaters who need help, or, we just share on a daily basis. And then I will go out into the world and just be normal. I'll do my normal job. I'll go about smiling and dog walking, checking in on my neighbours and having a cup of tea. Today was a beautiful day. My car went through the MOT. It passed with flying colours. I'm happy about that. Today I talked with my husband about our next vacation, when we're going to have that after the lockdown. Today I had a nap. Today I read my favourite spiritual book outside of AA literature. I read, in Addictive Eaters Anonymous, we only use AA literature because that's how you get well. But my step 11 work, conscious contact, sought through prayer and meditation to improve my conscious contact, is with, a few authors who talk about the stillness and the oneness with God and the mind, how to quieten the mind, how to connect with another person to help others and to be useful. So I could talk forever, but I'm learning also in sobriety. It's not about me. So I'm going to stop there, Justin, and see if anyone would like to ask me anything. And well, you know the format. I'll turn it back over to you. Thank you so much again for inviting me to share my story.
Awesome. Thank you, Pamela. I really, really identified with several things you shared, one of which being that when you shared from your youth, your childhood, if I can't be the best, I may as well not even try, basically, is kind of what you said. And I identify that with that very well, and understand where you're coming from and the failures and frustrations that can set me up with. So, all right. So before we get to the questions that come in, and a reminder to all of you who are listening live, if you have questions for Pamela, please type them in the Q&A link at the bottom of the screen, and we'll get to those. Pamela, would you mind sharing for about 60 seconds or less about Addictive Eaters Anonymous and why you chose that organization as the one you wanted contributions to go to from this meeting?
Oh, yes. Addictive Eaters Anonymous is a 12-step fellowship based on Alcoholics Anonymous. We certainly have men and women who are suffering from anorexia, bulimia, overexercise, drink, drugs, gambling, sex, anything. And we are for the desperate, people who absolutely binge eat, can't stop eating, anorexic, bulimic, can't stop thinking about food. We are a new fellowship. Our members have been practicing these principles of Alcoholics Anonymous for over 40 years. The fellowship itself is fairly new. Most of us have come from another food recovery fellowship, but we needed more than just talking about food plans. Addictive Eaters Anonymous absolutely goes further. It's not about the food. The food is just a symptom of the problem. Addictive Eaters Anonymous is about sobriety from all mind-altering substances. And it's about acknowledging that we need to go down to the roots and the causes. It's not just talking about the best food plan.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And I was actually going to ask a couple of those questions that you answered there. So that's really, really helpful. I appreciate it. So to our audience, live or podcast, if you're feeling a nudging to make a small contribution, please do so through the links here. We're at RECO12.com/support, or you can go directly to Addictive Eaters Anonymous and donate there too if you wish. Now it's time for Pamela to answer your questions. Once again, if you have questions, make sure you send them in through the Q&A link at the bottom of your screen. I'll get us started off with a couple of things that came to me as you were sharing, Pamela. You talked about the 15 years that you were in fellowships between, your first entrance into them and when you had your awakening, that spiritual experience that you talked about. During those 15 years, did you work with sponsors, work the steps in each of those fellowships? Did you sponsor others? Tell me about how come, if you did those things, how come that didn't take at that time?
How come it didn't what?
How come it didn't turn into this massive spiritual change, this spiritual experience that we talked about there? Yeah.
Yes, thank you. I think that I would class it as what is written in the book of AA. It says that some people come along and feel a little bit better. And that was me. So I came into AA and the other food fellowship in 1993. I identified here were people who talked about addictions to food and drink. I immediately felt better. I immediately got myself a sponsor. And for me, Justin, sometimes the sponsor can become more of a friend and a therapist rather than a spiritual advisor. I'm not blaming. The quick way to sum it up is I had not yet surrendered. Shall we talk about the definitions of surrender? I was not willing to go to any lengths to get well. I did not know the difference. I did not know that the solution to all my problems is in the big book, and that if I follow the readings and follow the help and wholeheartedly abandon myself to what is written, wholeheartedly abandon myself to surrender and giving up my own ideas. But I didn't know it. So those first 15 years, I felt better around the addiction. I didn't drink as much. I didn't eat as much. I lost weight. So on the outside, it looked as though I was doing well, but on the inside, I was still broken.
Do you feel like you were abstinent or sober at that time, or do you think it was more the white knuckling, or were you trying to drink, as we read in the materials, drink like a gentleman or whatever, eat like a gentleman, whatever that may look like? What are your thoughts on that?
That is an excellent statement. I really thought that I could control and enjoy my drinking and my eating. I remember it so well. And I also had arrogance because I was a professional woman. And I walked into AA and I thought, factory workers, trash men, Butchers and bakers? Really? Trying to tell me how to live? So I did not believe that these people could help me. And in the fellowship, or the other fellowships, I was very popular. And I managed to become the chair of this intergroup, the chair of this United Kingdom group in the fellowships. The ego grows if left unchecked. Sitting on my spiritual laurels doesn't help me. Believing that I'm clever and intellectual and a professional woman does not stop addiction. It grows arms and legs when you're not vigilant and on top of this thing. Thank you.
Yeah, Pamela, as you're sharing that, during those 15 years, you from the outside looked like everything was just chugging along great in your sobriety and your walk in recovery and everything. But you had that awakening, that spiritual awakening 15 years later. What type of pride hit was that for you to take a step back and go, wow, I have to basically start all over with these things? And what kind of feedback did you get from others of your fellowships who had maybe put you on a pedestal at that point? How did that go?
Excellent. Yeah. Well, for me, it wasn't a problem because when I just had enough. I'd had enough of being smart. I'd had enough of doing things my way. It just wasn't working. My marriage was on the rocks. My husband got sober before me, and he had a really good sponsor, and his sponsor had advised him, when your wife comes home drunk, say nothing. Don't text her, don't hound her, don't see where she is. Leave her alone. Leave the alcoholic alone. They're just another sick alcoholic. And that's exactly what he did. So he had a good sponsor. It's the best thing he ever did for me because I came crashing down and I was fed up. And I said to God, all right then, kill me or kill me. Suicide or not. And the friends in the fellowship, of course, they're so forgiving. Of course they are. They're still friends now. But they didn't have what I wanted because they're friends. That's exactly right. Friends. Easy does it. Softly, softly friends. I needed more than that. I need a sponsor who is not my friend. My sponsor is more than a friend. My sponsor is a spiritual guidance. My sponsor is someone who can see through my stuff, who helps me with my emotional and spiritual recovery. She's not my friend. And that's what I needed. So yeah, still very much friendly with those people, but and some people might describe, in fact they did, a couple of them back in my hometown said, I'm not ready to do what you do. These things are extremes. Your food plan appears to be extreme. Well, my goodness me. If food is killing you in the way it was killing me, what I eat today is an absolute lifesaver.
Well, that's very, very interesting stuff. We have a question that came in from Zach. Zach says, thank you, Pamela. I have been uplifted by your share. What are your suggestions for dealing with discouragement when addictive urges seem to keep coming back and coming back again?
Thank you very much for that. This program is so simple. They say it's not easy, but it's simple. I disagree with the not easy bit. Revolutionary and drastic ideas. The only thing that will cure an alcoholic from his addictions, an addict from their addiction, is work with other alcoholics, work with somebody else. Whatever I feel despair about, I need to make sure I'm giving it away. So if I'm lonely, ring someone and give them my company. If I'm feeling unloved, step 11 stuff, ring someone and give them my love. Now, none of that is not yet possible unless I've got step 1 right. Am I truly surrendered? Have I truly given up everything everything that I'm pushing before my sobriety? Have I given up everything that I'm pushing before my conscious contact with a power greater than myself? If the answer to that is yes, I stand a chance. But the only chance that I'll have is with a power greater than myself and a good set of people in the fellowship with whom to be accountable to. But I have to abandon myself to helping others. It's the only thing that works. That is the message of the book. Nothing else will do.
Yeah, and I want to go back to the passages that you quoted there, Pamela. I appreciate that, and I love these. And I'll just read kind of the two paragraphs there, if you don't mind, on page 14 of the big book. Reads simple but not easy. A price had to be paid. It meant destruction of self. You said self-centeredness is what it says here. I must turn in all things to the Father of light who presides over us all. And then the next sentence, these were revolutionary and drastic proposals. But the moment I fully accepted them, the effect was electric. And I think you shared that in your own share, how that effect was just electric, and that change just happened when you recognized that it wasn't just a I'll just try and do a little bit better right now. I need to make a drastic change. Talk to us a little bit more about that drastic and radical change.
Yes, thank you. So I remember in the first 2 years of my real surrendered sobriety, my head was done in. I would wake up each morning, I would go through what I've shared with you. I would come downstairs and I would pray on my knees downstairs. I've always been an early riser. My first career was all about working very early in the morning. So I would wake up, dawn, quiet, birds, get on my knees, pray my favorite prayers, get up, ring my sponsor, ring a couple more members, and then I would read from the book. And then on my way to work, when I traveled to the office, my head would attack me. I hope he doesn't say this. I hope she doesn't do this. I hope he manages to say good morning. What did she mean last night when she said that? You know, all of those, that thinking, that racing head that we addicts talk about, it would attack me all the way to work. Now, the drastic measures, I've already talked about drastic measures. Who cares to get up at dawn, read the book, ring 2 or 3 members, including their sponsor, just to hand over to a power greater than self? Drastic, revolutionary. I would get in the car, and of course, I can't help my thinking. My thinking needs to be changed by a power greater than myself. So in the first 2 years, the rattling was going on. And so the next thing I would do was action. I can pray as much as I like all day, Justin, but it's got to be followed by action. So I would walk into the office. These were my revolutionary and drastic things. I would empty the trash can. I would wash all the coffee mugs. I would fill the urn with hot water. And while I did those 3 things every morning without being found out, the cleaner would walk in and say, "Who's done that?" My colleagues would come in and say, "Someone's washed my mug." And the others would come in and say, "Oh, lovely, the coffee's on." And I did that so that my thinking head would diminish. I did it because I wanted to be of service to others. I did it because of the Just for Today card that tells me do something that nobody else is going to find out about. That is between me and a power greater than myself. Now, every spiritual author in this fellowship, but outside of this fellowship, and you know who I'm talking about, talks about if you want to get well, serve others. Revolutionary and drastic ideas. And lo and behold, after about 3 years, the thinking has diminished. It's quietened down. Because while I'm taking the action and helping others, there is a power greater than me inside my head, in my heart, quelling and dissolving the unmanageability. but it's got to be consistent. The half measures avail nothing. It has to be little and often every day. I read page 86, 87, and 88. I believe in the last line of page 87 and the whole of page 88. It says, pause, relax, take it easy. Many times a day, thy will be done. Revolutionary, drastic ideas, diminishment of self.
Love that. That's basically walking through steps 10 through 12 there in that day. I'm watching, I'm seeing, okay, what's going on? What's happening in my head? The rattling in my head. What is it? I'm doing a surrender. Thy will be done. I'm going to turn it over. I'm going to surrender, give it up. I'm powerless over it. Take it, it's kind of a 1, 7, 11 type thing. And then you get to work. All right, what can I do to help this person that I'm worried about if they're going to say hello to me? Cool. Well, I'm going to serve them. I'm going to clean their coffee mug or whatever it may be. What a beautiful, beautiful thing. And that is a drastic change for us addicts. We are so stuck I am so stuck in my own head, of, well, if that person thinks this about me, what am I going to do about it? How's this going to affect me? Rather, I should say, well, if that person thinks this about me, I'm just going to love them anyways and serve them anyways. And that is a drastic change. Beautiful.
It's miraculous. I mean, I can't do this by myself. When I hear myself say these things, much more when I hear myself do these things, who is this person? This self-centered, narcissistic, egotistical female that just wanted herself to be loved and cherished, so she drank and drugged. Who is this person that now washes coffee mugs and picks up litter when nobody's looking and nobody knows and nobody pats her on the back? This is a change far beyond my control. Couldn't do it by myself, needed to be taught. And the freedom from self is phenomenal, and words can't describe it.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you, Pamela. Before we close up and get into our closing things here, do you have any final words of wisdom or closing remarks that you'd like to share with us?
My drug addiction, my addiction, my alcoholism, my food addiction, my addictive eating addiction is a gift. It's a gift that brought me my crucifixion. It's a gift that without it, I would never have changed. It's a gift that I can help others with, and a day at a time. And I always say to everyone, don't listen to a word I have said about me. You need to speak to my parents. They're dead. You need to speak to my other family. You need to speak to my husband. You need to speak to my sponsor to see if this person who has brought this message to you is really living this life. That's the only way you're going to know. So yeah, I am contactable. I'll take any calls. I'm best at my best in the mornings before British lunchtime. And I'm happy to give my number here or wherever, Justin. Thanks.
Awesome. Yeah, what we'll do is any emails that come in asking about things, I'll forward them to you, and I'll let them know how to contact you actually, so they can reach out to you. So that's an invitation to anybody who would like to talk to Pamela. Email it to me, send it through the website RECO12.com, or email is RECO12pod, RECO12pod @gmail.com, and I can get those things to Pamela. Pamela, thank you so much. This has been an amazing RECO12 weekly speaker meeting for all addicts and those wanting to learn more about addiction and the recovery therefrom. If we didn't get to your question, or if you have other questions, please go to RECO12.com/forum and join in our community and ask those questions and answer others' questions that may come up. I invite the audience to come back next week. Next week's speaker will be Kevin H., and he will be speaking on emotional sobriety, maintaining emotional sobriety. Kevin H. is an S-Anon. He's the spouse of a sex addict, and it will be great. If you have not yet gone to RECO12.com and submitted your email address to get on the invitation list, we send out one email a week that just is a basic overview of the upcoming meeting with a link to it. Please do so you can join us live each Friday at 10 a.m. Pacific time. Pamela has asked that we do the 7-step prayer to launch us into the rest of our day. She's also said that she'd love to offer it, and she's going to do it. She's going to repeat it 3 times. And I love this. I think it's really cool, and I'm happy to experience this with her. So, Pamela, the time is yours to do the step 7 prayer 3 times.
Thank you, Justin. So I say it 3 times because the first time, just words. The second time, I begin to hear it. And the third time, I probably mean it. So, my Creator, I am now willing that you should have all of me, good and bad. I pray that you now remove from me every single defect of character which stands in the way of my usefulness to you and my fellows. Grant me strength as I go out from here to do your bidding. My Creator, I am now willing that you should have all of me, good and bad. I pray that you now remove from me every single defect of character which stands in the way of my usefulness to you and my fellows. Grant me strength as I go out from here to do your bidding. My Creator, I am now willing that you should have all of me, good and bad. I pray that you now remove from me every single defect of character which stands in the way of my usefulness to you and my fellows. Grant me strength as I go out from here to do your bidding. Amen.
Amen. Beautiful. Thank you so much. Keep coming back, everybody. It works if you work it. So work it. You are worth it. Thanks again, Pamela. Have a fantastic day.
Thank you, Justin.
Standing still a moment, carving out this time, reflecting on the landscape of this life of mine. Peaks too high to conquer, streams too wide to cross, troughs too deep to walk through without incurring loss. Yet here I am, still standing tall, despite the rough terrain. One like me survived the storms and walked through wind and rain. Still standing, I will fight the good fight, still searching